to split all that information in the regions that we're tracking sales today. So first of all, if you look at the United States and North America, that accounts for 40% of the revenue of all the 28 territories we're measuring. United States is a big, big market. It's by far the world's largest market for contact lenses in the world. And the interesting thing is that it's still growing very fast in all directions. At this moment, we're talking about a growth of 6%, but it's one of the few markets, one of the few developed economies where you see the growth coming from all segments at once. Then we have Latin America. We're tracking sales in 3 countries there. It's still very small, 2%. Why? Because this is a region that now has been hit by a crisis, economic crisis in all countries, and the penetration of contact lenses is very small yet. I would say that after all these crises are gone, like maybe the next 5 or 10 years, this region will begin to be very important. At this moment, very small, but still growing very fast. We're talking about double-digit growth here, almost 17%. When you look at Europe, Europe is a very mature market. We're talking about 27% of the revenue in the countries where we're tracking sales. And here we have the third world largest market, which is UK. As you can see, as I mentioned to you, it's a very mature market. So the growth rate is still quite low. It's 2.4%. But what I would like to point out is that it's still growing. So this is a category that's growing everywhere in the world. Then, of course, we have 2 countries in the Middle East. They're still very small. It's a very different dynamic over there. And finally, when we talk about Asia, you see here that I make a split. So the 7 countries that we're tracking, they account for 30% of the sales, and they're growing 9.2%. And then I made the second line when it comes to Asia without Japan, because Japan is the second largest market in the world, and it's so big that actually will bias a little bit when you look at this. And if you take Japan out of the equation, the growth is even bigger. We're talking about 17% growth, which is even higher than Latin America. But think like this: Latin America, the penetration is so small that every incremental sales that you put, the growth is very high. In Asia, we're talking about a mix of developed countries and emerging economies, but all of them already have higher penetration than countries like Latin America or Middle East, and they are still growing very fast. So this is a region full of opportunities for contact lenses today. Oh, sorry. When it comes to what is driving this growth, it's very clear. It doesn't matter which region we're talking about. The clear daily lenses are always growing way ahead of the total market. It doesn't matter if it's a mature market like Europe or like emerging market like Latin America and so on. All the growth is coming from the lenses at this moment, because every time you upgrade, or from monthly lenses or yearly lenses to daily lenses, you multiply your revenue exponentially. So this is what is driving the growth today. It's not exactly like increasing the penetration of the category throughout the country. It's more about upgrading. Now, when we want to understand the differences between the regions, so in this chart over here, it's the share in percentage of the revenue by all these regions and the type of lenses. So you see here, what is the same in other countries? Spherical lenses, of course, is going to be the bulk of the business. But a difference here that I want you to take note when you look at Asia, the 7 countries that we measure, is that the bottom part, when it comes to cosmetic lenses, it's more than 1/5 of the market. It's 22% of the sales, which doesn't happen in any other region, except maybe for Middle East, which I didn't include here. But those countries, they have a very different dynamic. Like I would say their markets are very small, and like cosmetics, when it comes to eyes, have a very different purpose. But like, we're not talking about the same size of market. So 22% of the sales for Asia are coming from beauty lenses. What's the other thing that is very interesting when you look at Asia that is very different from other countries? If you look at the green part, which is multifocal lenses for presbyopia, if you look at other developed markets like US or Europe, the relevance of multifocal lenses is quite high. It's over 10%, but here in Asia, it is still 3%. So the 2 points that I want to point out today is that multifocal lenses are still very small in Asia. On the other hand, beauty lenses have a completely different approach versus other regions. But one might say, well, when it comes to multifocal lenses, we're talking about a product usually for people 40 years old plus. It's a more expensive product. Maybe the penetration is not so high because we're looking at a mix that also includes lots of emerging markets. But if you split the 7 countries in 2 like this, let's put like this, developed Asia, where you put Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore, it is still 3%. And when you go to what we're calling here emerging Asia today, like China, India, Malaysia, and so on, the countries that we're measuring those sales, it's almost 0. And even toric lenses, they are so much smaller than in other markets. And of course, beauty lenses are much more important. And the fact that beauty lenses are much more important in these markets means 2 things. First of all, yes, there is like a completely different relationship with this kind of product. But also second, there is way more room to improve the presence of like contact lenses with the purpose of correction. The fact that you see like toric and multifocal lenses so small, it's a reflection of how there is room to improve the perception of, yes, I want to wear contact lenses for correction in these countries as well. And finally, one of the last global trends I want to bring comparing regions before getting into more detail is that Asia has a unique opportunity as well, because when it comes to this is the market share of global brands. When I mean global brands that are selling in at least like 3 or 4 regions. Then we have the gray part, which would be private labels, so contact lenses driven by the retailers, and this could be either a global brand behind it or a local manufacturer. And then we have the green part, which is local or regional brands. And Asia is the only region in the world where actually local and regional brands are very, very important. You still don't have like a brand that is 100% consolidated throughout all the countries in the region, but that could change. And I think this is a very interesting scenario because you have much more competition and you also have much more offer for the consumers. So over 1/4 of the market is coming from local or regional brands, which is something very, very unique. Okay, so by this first introduction, I want you to keep in mind a few messages. So I talked about daily disposable lenses. They're the ones that are driving the bulk of the growth across the world. The second message, cosmetic lenses. So this is a region where these cosmetic lenses, they have a completely different purpose and role in the lives of the consumers. And South Korea is a benchmark that I want to bring a few examples later on. And third, multifocal lenses, they're so small here and there's so much opportunity to increase the relevance of these lenses, specialty lenses as a whole, but multifocal, they're still very small. And I want you to take a look at these 3 key points because I'm going to dissect them a little bit and I'm going to talk more detail about each one of these 3 points. So the first one, talking a little bit more about daily disposable lenses.